There is something about resentment that most people who experience it already know, but have never quite been able to name. It does not feel like a wound that has failed to heal. It feels like something that is being actively maintained. The person who carries resentment for a year, 5 years, a decade, is not someone who tried to let go and could not. They are, in most cases, someone who, at a level below conscious decision, chose not to. Not from weakness, not from an inability to move forward, from a specific, documented, neurologically grounded reason that the resentment is providing something the person has not yet found another way to get. The question is not why people cannot let go of anger. The question is what the anger is doing that makes letting go cost more than holding on. The research on anger at the neurocognitive level is precise and, once understood, reframes the entire question. Anger is produced by a neurocognitive program engineered by natural selection to use bargaining tactics to resolve conflicts of interest in favor of the angry individual. Read that again. Anger is a bargaining program. It is not a symptom of damage. It is not a failure of regulation. It is an instrument designed to impose costs on a person who has wronged you and to withhold benefits from them until they change their behavior or acknowledge the wrong. The program has an objective. The problem is that most resentment exists in situations where the objective can never be reached. The person who wronged you is not present to feel the costs being imposed, or they do not care, or they are dead, or the wrong was done so long ago that the context in which it could be resolved no longer exists. And the program, which was designed to run until the conflict is resolved, keeps running. Because the conflict was never resolved. Because it cannot be. Welcome to Dr. Cole's Dark Psychology. I'm Dr. Evan Cole, behavioral psychologist and behavioral analyst. Today, the emotion that Alcoholics Anonymous describes as the #1 offender. The emotion that Friedrich Nietzsche called the most dangerous of all poisons. Not because of what it does to the person who is resented, but because of what it does to the person who carries it. Resentment. Not the flash of anger that arrives and passes. The sustained, low-grade, continuously maintained state of holding a wrong in active memory. The specific psychological architecture through which a person keeps an old injury current, fresh, and present, decades after the event that produced it. The neuroscience of why people stay angry, and the specific reason why telling someone to simply let go is not an instruction their nervous system knows how to follow. A precise distinction before the mechanism. Resentment is not anger. Anger is a fast, activating emotion, the immediate response to a perceived wrong, designed to motivate action in the moment. Resentment is what anger becomes when the action it was designed to motivate was never taken, or was taken and did not resolve the wrong. Resentment is anger that has been internalized, turned inward, stored, maintained through rumination, and carried forward into a present that the original wrong no longer occupies. The word itself comes from the French ressentir, to feel again, to re-feel. That is precisely what resentment does neurologically. It keeps reactivating the emotional experience of the event, bringing the physiological state of the original wrong into the present. For the body that carries it, the wrong is always still occurring. The brain structures involved in resentment are the same structures involved in threat detection and memory consolidation. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional memory center, plays a central role. When a significant wrong is experienced, the amygdala records it with heightened emotional weight, the same mechanism that records near-miss accidents, predator encounters, and betrayals by trusted people. This elevated encoding serves a protective function. The brain needs to remember who is dangerous and what situations to avoid. The stronger the emotional charge of the experience, the more durably it is encoded. The problem for resentment is what happens during rumination, the repeated mental rehearsal of the wrong. Each time the person returns to the memory, the amygdala reactivates, the cortisol rises, the sympathetic nervous system engages. The memory is not being processed and filed. It is being re-encoded with fresh emotional weight, each rehearsal making the memory more vivid. The rumination that feels like processing is, neurologically, the opposite. It is keeping the wound open. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for regulating the amygdala's threat response, is supposed to step in and contextualize. This event is over, the threat is past. It is safe to lower the activation. In chronic resentment, this regulation is consistently overridden. The mechanism is mood-congruent memory. The brain preferentially retrieves other memories that match that emotional state. The original resentment recruits a growing archive of supporting evidence. The case against the person builds itself. The resentful person is not dwelling in the past. Their past is dwelling in them, actively, neurologically, right now. Here is the finding that most people who carry resentment will recognize but resist. Resentment provides something. Not pleasure, not comfort in the conventional sense, but something specific and functional that the person has not consciously identified, and that the body is not willing to give up without an alternative. The research identifies several specific secondary gains. The first is identity. Long-term resentment often becomes integrated into the person's sense of self. The story of the wrong becomes part of the narrative of who they are. The person who was betrayed, who was treated unfairly. Releasing the resentment requires releasing a piece of the identity that has been built around it. The second is moral superiority. As long as the resentment is held, the wrongdoer is wrong and the resentful person is right. The resentment is the ongoing evidence of the injustice. Releasing it can feel like conceding the point, like agreeing that what happened was acceptable or did not matter or has been sufficiently addressed. None of those things are true. But the nervous system does not make that distinction. The third is protection. The resentment keeps the wrongdoer at a specific emotional distance. It maintains the wall that was erected after the injury. Releasing it can feel like opening the door again, like vulnerability, like the possibility of being hurt in the same way again. The resentment is not punishment for the other person. It is armor for the self. The armor has a price. Harboring resentment stimulates the fight-or-flight mechanisms of the sympathetic nervous system, spiking cortisol and maintaining the body in a state of low-grade threat activation. Prolonged elevated cortisol suppresses immune function, disrupts sleep, and impairs cognitive function. The body does not know that the threat is a memory. It responds as if the threat were present. The person carrying chronic resentment is, physiologically, in a state of sustained partial emergency. Rumination increases angry feelings and lowers the threshold for aggressive responses in unrelated situations. The person who carries chronic resentment does not only bring it to interactions involving the original wrong, they bring it everywhere. The anger that was earned by one person gets paid for by everyone else. People who carry resentment are told, with regularity, to let it go, to forgive, to move on, to stop giving the person who wronged them space in their head. The instruction is correct in its destination. It is useless as navigation, because letting go requires the nervous system to do something it does not know how to do by direct instruction. Stop running a program that has not reached its objective. The bargaining program that is anger does not have an off switch that responds to the decision to be done. It has two resolution pathways. The first, the conflict is resolved. The wrongdoer acknowledges the harm, makes appropriate repair. The second, the person carrying the resentment explicitly provides the nervous system with an alternative framework. Not forgetting, not excusing, but a cognitive restructuring specific enough to provide the program with a different kind of resolution. That process, the second pathway, is not a decision. It is a practice. And it is considerably harder than being told to let go. The research on what reduces chronic resentment is specific and converges on several findings. The intervention that most consistently reduces resentment is not processing the feelings more. It is interrupting the rumination cycle, not suppressing the anger. Suppression of anger is consistently associated with worse outcomes, but interrupting the specific loop of mentally rehearsing the wrong breaks the re-encoding cycle that keeps the memory emotionally fresh. The second finding is more counterintuitive. Understanding the secondary gain is the prerequisite for releasing it. A person who does not know that their resentment is their armor cannot make the decision to put it down. They can only experience the instruction to let go as a demand that they make themselves vulnerable to the same wound again. The person who stays angry is not weak. They are not broken. They are running a program that was designed to run. The anger is real. The wrong was real. The injury was real. The resentment is the instrument the brain built to address it. Telling that person to let go is accurate. It is also like telling a smoke alarm to stop sounding because the fire was last year. The alarm does not have access to the calendar. It has access to the signal. The signal it is waiting for is not time. It is not the other person's apology. It is not their suffering. It is the specific internal work of providing the alarm with a different signal, one that tells the program that the threat has been accounted for, that the self has been protected, that it is safe now to stop. If this gave you a framework for something you have been carrying, that is the work this channel exists to do. Subscribe to Dr. Cole's Dark Psychology. We'll see you in the next one.